In today's tutorial, I'll be demonstrating how you can take an image and convert it into this logo design using Inkscape. Before we get started though, be sure to join my mailing list to get over 200 free design templates, including logos, icons, textures, infographics, and so much more. As a subscriber, you'll be the first to receive the free templates that I send out each month. I'll have some information about that in the description of the video below if you want to learn more about that. So to get us started here in Inkscape, the first thing I'm going to do is grab my pen tool, and I'm going to click on the canvas once to draw a point, and I'll hold my shift key and bring the line, or control rather, and bring the line straight across the screen like that, and then click again and then press enter to close the path so that we have a single line. Now let me go back to my selection tool. I'm going to open up the fill and stroke menu now by coming down here to the color stripe and double clicking on that. And the fill and stroke menu will open up over here on the right hand side of your screen. I will click on the stroke style tab, and I'm going to increase the size of this stroke to something like maybe 20 pixels, and we'll see how that looks. Okay, that looks pretty good right there. I want to give this rounded caps though, so I'll come over here to the caps area and click on the rounded option. And now I'm going to make some copies of this. So you know what, first let me make this a little wider. I'm going to grab my nodes tool and I'm going to hold control and bring this out a little bit like that. We want this line to go across a good portion of the screen, as you can see in my example. Now I'll grab my selection tool. I'm going to right click this and go to duplicate and hold the control key and bring this down about this far. And just like that, we've made a duplicate copy. And I'm going to repeat that process several times so that we have a whole bunch of these lines. So let me select both of these. And instead of right clicking, I'm just going to use the keyboard shortcut, which is Command D or Control D if you're on Windows or Linux. And then I'll hold Control and bring these down here like this. And I'm just going to repeat this process several times until I have a bunch of these lines. And don't worry about them being evenly spaced apart. We will address that in just a minute. So let me make another set of these copies. And that looks pretty good right there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of them by clicking and dragging a selection going over the whole area. And I will open up the Align and Distribute menu by going to Object and selecting Align and Distribute. From this drop-down, I want to make sure I have Last Selected chosen. And now I'm going to come down here to where it says Distribute, and I will select this option right here that says Distribute Vertically with Even Vertical Gaps. Now that everything is spaced apart evenly, let's combine these together by going to Path and selecting Combine. And now I want to make these into a circle. So I'm going to grab my Circles and Ellipse tool, and I'm going to click and drag to draw a circle, and I'm going to hold the Control key so we get a perfectly round circle like that. And I'm going to grab my Selection tool. Let me zoom out a little bit. I'll select both of these objects and make sure that they're centered up vertically and horizontally. And now I'm going to take just the circle and I'm going to zoom in over the top portion and grab this arrow right here, and I will hold Control and Shift and scale this down until the top of the circle extends just outside of the top line that we drew previously. And these lines here should be extending far beyond the circle. So if your lines are not extending beyond the circle, just grab your nodes tool and click on this and select all of these nodes and just drag them out. Now that that's done, let's select both objects and go to Path and select Cut Path. And that's going to break everything up into separate objects. And if we come back over here into the Fill and Stroke menu, we can come down here to the opacity slider and bring this down in half, and you can see where these individual paths start and begin. So I'm going to click off of it to deselect everything. And now I just want to select each of these and press the Delete key to get rid of them. An easier way to select them, though, would be to hold your Option key or your Alt key on Windows or Linux and just click and drag to draw a line going through them like that to select them all, and then you could press the Delete key. And I'll do the same thing over here. I'll hold my Option key, click and drag a line going through them, press Delete, and there we go. So now I'm going to select all of these lines right here, and I'm going to go to Path, and I will select Stroke to Path. And now what I will do is I will click off of it to deselect everything. And now I'm going to start drawing some lines going at the bottom of each of these lines. So what I will do is I will grab my rectangle tool and I will come up here to this magnet icon and turn on snapping. And I will open this menu option over here. Let me go back to reset to simple snapping mode. And I want to make sure I have everything selected here. We want all three of these options selected. We can close out of that now. And I want to make this rectangle the size of the gap between two of these lines. So I will snap to the top portion or the bottom portion of the top line and then click and drag to draw a rectangle and snap it to the top portion of the next line beneath it. And now we'll grab my selection tool. We can turn off snapping now. And I'm going to take this right arrow and bring this all the way out. We want this rectangle to extend far beyond the circle. And now I'm going to place this at the bottom of this top line right here. So I'm going to hold my Shift key and click on this object. I'll come back over here into my Align and Distribute menu, and where it says this option right here, Align Bottom Edges, select that one. And when you do that, it'll place it on the bottom of that line like that. Now, depending on the size of the space between each of these lines, you may have to adjust this top rectangle over here. So let me click off this to deselect everything. I'm going to select this rectangle right here, and I want this to be about maybe 1/4 the height of this object. So I'm going to take this top arrow and just bring that down a little bit until it's about roughly 1/4. You can just eyeball it. It doesn't have to be exact. And now I'm going to create copies of this and then align them to the bottom of each of these lines. So I'll press Command D or Control D if you're on Windows, and then hold Shift and click on the next line and select this option over here that says Align Bottom Edges. And just like that, we have another copy. And now we want to repeat this process for each of these. So just keep making duplicate copies by pressing Control D or Command D if you're on Mac, and then hold your Shift key to select both objects and then align the bottom edges as you see me doing here. Once that's done, let's take all of these rectangles we just drew and unify them together. So I'll hold my Alt key and click and drag a line going through all of them like this to select all of them. And I will unify them together by going to Path and selecting Union. And now I want to do the same thing with the rectangles beneath it. So let's click and drag a selection going over just those larger lines that we created earlier. So we only select those, and then go to Path and select Union. So now they are all one path. So now it's time to bring in the image that we're going to work with. So I will have linked in the description of the video a copy to this image if you want to follow along with what I'm doing here, or you can use your own image. I'm going to right click this and go to Copy Image. I'll come back into Inkscape and let me zoom out a little bit. I'll come over here and press Control V to paste the image. And now I want to open up the Trace Bitmap menu. So I'll come up here to Path and select Trace Bitmap. And under the single scan option, we want to choose Brightness Cutoff. And if you notice down here, you'll see a live preview of the image. I'm going to take this slider and bring this up so that the preview is a little more filled in. We want this to be a little more filled in than that. So right there looks about good. Depending on the image you're working with, this image here seems to work really well with about 0.738. So I'll leave that as it is and I will click Apply. And now we have a vector copy of that image. So let me take this object and press Delete to get rid of it. And now I'm going to take this object and place it over the circle. I'm going to hold Control and Shift and click and drag one of these arrows to scale it down. And I'm going to make this a different color just so I can see it better. I'm going to come over here and choose the color red, and then I will come back into my Fill and Stroke menu and bring the opacity down in half. This is just going to make it so that we can see this better. And let me scale this up a little bit. Now the idea is you want to position this wherever it is that you'd like the image to be relative to the circle beneath it. So if I come back over here into my thumbnail design, you can see I placed it right about in the center with the top of the leaves going towards the top of the circle. So I want to do the same thing over here. I want to place this right about up here. And one thing to keep in mind is we will be putting the text down here at the bottom. So you don't want to put too much of the image down here. So I'm going to make this a little smaller, and I'm going to hold my Control key while I scale this down so that it maintains the aspect ratio. And then I'm going to take these green lines, or the smaller rectangles that we drew previously, and I want to raise them to the top by going to up here in the Tool Settings menu. I want to select this button right here that says Raise to the Top. And then I'm going to hold Shift and click on the palm tree image, and I want to do a path difference. So I'll come up here to Path and select Difference. And now with this selected, I will hold Shift and click on the rectangles beneath it, and I will do the same thing. I will go to Path and select Difference. And now we end up with that sort of effect right there. Now the way that I formatted this design, it looks better on a dark backdrop than it does on a light backdrop. The reason why is because the negative space showing through here shows the palm tree as the darker image, or the silhouette. So if it's on a white backdrop, it's not going to work. So for now, I'm just going to change the background of the canvas color. First, let me bring up the opacity of this. Let me make this a shade of pink. We're going to apply a gradient to this momentarily. I'm going to come down here to my color picker and choose a shade of pink to start off with. And I'm going to change the background of the canvas. So I will go to File and go to Document Properties. And where it says Desk, I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to make this darker. I'll maybe even use a dark shade of blue. And whatever shade you use for this, just copy this here, select it, and then right-click it and go to copy. Okay, so I ran into some technical difficulties there. Copy the RGBA value here, close out of this, and then we're going to come over here to the page, and we're going to make the page the same color. So I'm just going to select this and just Control V and paste that in there. So now we have a dark canvas that we're working with, and now I can close out of this. So now I'm going to apply a gradient to this image here. So I'm going to come over here to my gradient tool, and I'm just going to click and drag down like this, and I'm going to hold my Control key to bring the line straight down so that we have a gradient that goes from pink to transparent. And now we could add some additional colors into this gradient. So if I come over here to my fill menu, you can see we have the gradient stripe. I can take the top of this gradient and move it down. And what I could also do is I can double click this stripe right here to add a new color in there. And for the thumbnail, you can see here, I made the top of this blue and then it transitions to a pinkish orange shade. So let me do the same thing here. I'm going to select this stop right here, and I'm going to make this blue. You can use your color wheel or you can use the sliders down here, whatever works best for you. And then you can move this down a little bit. You can edit this on the canvas. And I can move that up a little bit as well. Make sure you hold Control while you're moving this up and down so that you lock it onto the vertical axis. And I may even add another color in here as well. So I will double click this line. You can add a new color in here by using this stripe right here, or you could just double click the path. I like to use this stripe because this stripe is a little more accurate. If I don't click the line directly on the line, it'll lose the image that I'm working on and I'll have to select it again. So it's easier to just double click this part right here. And I'll make this one maybe yellow or orange and see how that looks. Maybe a lighter shade. And I will just adjust these as needed until everything blends together nicely. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. You may have to bring this off the canvas a little bit and space it out some to make it have a nice blend. And for this shade of yellow, I'm going to even have to add some orange to it to make it blend a little nicely into the pink. That looks a lot better. Let me bring that down. And now we're just going to add some text down here at the bottom, as you can see that I did here in the thumbnail. So let me grab my text tool, which is located right there. And for this thumbnail, I just wrote the word Pacific. And I'm going to make this a shade of yellow, light yellow. And the font that I used for this, you can use whichever font that you like. The font that I used is called Sirona Script. So let me go to my text menu. I'll go to text and choose text and font. And the font that I'm looking for is Sirona. Sirona Script. There we go. And I will take this and place this over the top like that. And once you place the text over it, you may notice that there's too much of this color there and it kind of clashes. What you could do is you could select the object and go back to the gradient tool, and you could just take this bottom node and bring that up a little bit. And then you could even move these nodes up as well. Okay, so that looks a lot better. And now you have an image that you can export. You can select all of this and you can export this as a PNG image with a transparent background, and you will have a usable file that you can upload to a print-on-demand site, or you could even use this as a logo or a t-shirt design or whatever. If you found this lesson useful, then consider checking out my Inkscape Masterclass. It's a collection of over 60 videos where I go over all of the tools and features in Inkscape, and I explain what they are and demonstrate how they work. Kind of like how I did in this video. We even have a private community where you can ask questions and get help from me anytime you want. And best of all, there's no monthly membership fees. You just pay $17 one time and you're in for life. I'll have some information about that down below if you want to check that out. As always, thanks for watching.